Kate Summers was standing in the greenhouse when the alarms began to wail through the corridors of Kepler Station. She had been working with the red soil from Zephyr, examining samples under a microscope that cost more than a small spacecraft. The young botanist loved this moment of her day, the quiet time when she could focus on the tiny worlds that existed beneath the surface of alien soil. Her hands were dirty, and she wore a simple gray lab coat with her name embroidered on the pocket. She was 28 years old, brilliant in her field and completely unprepared for what was about to happen to her life. The alarms screamed through every speaker on the station. Kate jumped up, knocking over a small vial of specimens. She watched as the liquid spilled across the metal workbench, and her first instinct was to grab paper towels and try to save the samples. She was that kind of person, the sort who cared more about her research than about alarms or emergencies. But then the greenhouse door burst open, and Commander Lisa Voss ran inside. Her face flushed and her eyes wide with something that looked like panic, mixed with disbelief. Lisa was a woman in her 50s, strong and experienced, and Kate had never seen her look frightened before. The commander grabbed Kate by the shoulders, her fingers pressing firmly into the fabric of Kate's lab coat. She told Kate to leave everything and come with her immediately. There was no time for questions. Lisa's voice was urgent and clipped, the way it sounded when she was giving orders during emergency drills. But this did not feel like a drill. Kate followed Lisa through the winding corridors of Kepler Station. Other crew members were running toward the command center as well, their footsteps echoing on the metal floor plates. The station was a hub of scientific research, positioned in orbit above Zephyr and home to about 200 scientists and support staff from Earth and several allied colonies. Kate had been working there for 3 years, and it had become her home away from home. Now it felt like something dangerous was threatening that home. When they reached the command center, Kate saw the observation window that looked out into space. Her breath caught in her throat. There was a ship out there, a massive vessel that seemed to hang in the void like a predator waiting for its moment to strike. The ship was unlike anything Kate had ever seen before. Its hull shimmered with colors that shifted and changed, moving through blues and purples and deep greens. The colors seemed to have depth and meaning, as if they were some form of communication that Kate's human eyes could not quite interpret. The ship was enormous. Kate estimated it was at least 5 kilometers long, with structures on its hull that looked organic rather than mechanical. Sections of it seemed to pulse with bioluminescent light. There were weapons visible on the surface, but they did not look like anything designed by humans. They looked alive almost. Kate felt a chill run down her spine as she stared at the vessel. Lisa was speaking rapidly with her communications officer, a young man named Derek, who looked like he had never been more nervous in his life. Derek kept repeating that the alien ship was hailing them, that they were receiving transmissions on all frequencies. Lisa ordered him to open a communication channel and to be ready for anything. She told the other crew members to stand by their stations and to remain calm, though her voice suggested that calmness was not a realistic expectation under these circumstances. The communications channel opened with a sound that was not quite music and not quite static. It was something in between, something that made Kate's ears feel strange. Then a voice came through the speakers, smooth and layered, as if multiple people were speaking in perfect unison. The voice was female and it spoke in English, which meant that the aliens had either learned the language or had the ability to translate it perfectly into their communication system. The voice introduced itself as Vex, herald of the Empress Celestine, ruler of the Corinthian Dominion. Vex said that the Empress sent greetings to the inhabitants of Kepler Station, and that this was not an invasion or an act of aggression. Vex stated that she had come seeking something very specific, something that was said to exist on this station. She was scanning for a human female who matched a very particular description. Once Vex found this human, the veiled fleet would depart peacefully. The humans on the station had nothing to fear if they cooperated. Lisa's face had gone pale. She asked Vex what she was looking for and why she needed to scan the station. Vex responded that the Empress would explain everything once the human in question was brought to the communication center. Vex assured Lisa that this was a matter of great importance to the stability of the entire galaxy, but she could not discuss details with anyone except the human female who matched the description that the seers had provided. Everyone in the command center was looking at each other with confusion and worry. Lisa turned to look at her crew, and several people shrugged. They had no idea what this alien herald was looking for. Lisa took a breath and told Vex that the station held many human females, and without a clearer description, she could not know who to bring to the communication center. Vex's voice changed slightly. She said that her sensors were detecting the presence now. The human in question was located in the agricultural section of the station. She was called Kate Summers. The alien herald said that she had been chosen by forces beyond anyone's control, and her presence on Kepler Station was not coincidence. Kate Summers was needed by the Corinthian Empire for a purpose that would soon become clear to her. When Lisa heard the name Kate Summers, she turned around and looked directly at the young botanist. Kate felt her stomach drop. Everyone in the command center was now staring at her. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She had no idea why an alien empire would be looking for her. She was nobody important. She was just a botanist who loved plants and wanted to do good scientific work. Lisa placed a hand on Kate's shoulder and asked her if she was all right. Kate nodded slowly, though she was not all right at all. She felt like she was floating above her own body, watching the scene unfold as if it was happening to someone else. This could not be real. This could not be happening. She was supposed to finish her research on Zephyr soil composition and return to Earth in 6 months. She was supposed to present her findings at the International Botanical Conference. She was supposed to have a normal, quiet life dedicated to her work. Lisa took Kate to a private room in the command center and told her to prepare herself. She was going to speak to this alien herald, and Lisa wanted Kate to know that whatever happened, she was not alone. The commander assured Kate that the station's security protocols were in place, and that they would protect her if the aliens proved to be a threat. But something in Lisa's tone suggested that she was not entirely confident in those protocols. Kate asked Lisa if she knew what the aliens wanted from her. Lisa shook her head. She said that she had no idea, but that an alien empire would not send a massive warship across the galaxy for anything trivial. This was serious, and Kate needed to be prepared for that reality. Kate felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she forced them back. She had always been good at controlling her emotions, at focusing on the task at hand. She told Lisa that she was ready, though she absolutely was not ready for anything. As Kate walked toward the communication center, she could not help but think about her life back on Earth. She thought about her mother, who had always been worried about Kate working so far from home. She thought about her favorite coffee shop in Berkeley, where she would spend afternoons reading scientific journals. She thought about the simple, quiet life she had built for herself. Now all of that seemed impossibly distant, like it belonged to a different person living in a different universe. The communication center doors slid open, and Kate stepped inside. On the main monitor, the face of an alien became visible. She had skin that shimmered like oil on water, reflecting every color of the spectrum. Her eyes were large and intelligent, with pupils that seemed to focus with intensity on Kate. This was Vex, the herald of the Empress Celestine, and everything Kate had ever known was about to change forever in ways she could never have imagined. Vex's appearance on the monitor was both beautiful and unsettling. Her face was more angular than a human face, with cheekbones that seemed almost sharp enough to cut. Her eyes were a luminous violet color that seemed to glow with an inner light. When she moved, it was with an elegance that suggested she was far more than just a simple messenger. Her scaled skin caught the light in ways that human skin never could, creating patterns that seemed to shift and change with every slight movement she made. Vex spoke first, and her voice was exactly as it had sounded through the communication channel earlier, though now Kate could see the slight movements of her mouth forming the words. Vex said that she was glad to finally meet Kate Summers face to face. She told Kate that what she was about to learn would seem impossible and strange, but that Kate needed to listen carefully and keep an open mind. The fate of billions of lives might depend on what happened in the next few hours. Kate swallowed hard. She asked Vex what she wanted from her. She said that she was just a botanist, that she did research on alien plants, and that she could not possibly be important to anyone outside of the scientific community. Kate's voice sounded smaller and more frightened than she wanted it to sound. She tried to straighten her posture and appear braver than she felt, but she knew she was failing at that attempt. Vex smiled, and it was an expression that Kate could recognize even across the vast differences between their species. It was a knowing smile, The sort of smile someone makes when they are about to tell you something that will change your entire world. Vex began to speak about the Corinthian dominion and its long history. She explained that the Corinthian people had been ruled by an unbroken line of female rulers for over 3,000 years. Each ruler had been a warrior, strong and fierce, dedicated to protecting her people and expanding her empire through strength and military might. The current empress was Celestine, and she had ruled for 217 years. The Corinthians lived much longer than humans did, and their leaders sometimes ruled for centuries. Empress Celestine had been a powerful ruler, and she had won many wars. But in recent centuries, something had changed. The wars had become more frequent, more brutal, and less conclusive. Each victory led only to new conflicts. Resources were becoming scarce, and the neighboring empires were beginning to resent Corinthian dominance. Vex explained that Empress Celestine had begun to believe that the old ways of ruling through military might were no longer sufficient. She had consulted with the ancient seers of the Corinthian people, holy women who possessed the ability to see into possible futures and understand the threads of fate. These seers had revealed to the Empress a prophecy that had been hidden in the oldest texts of the Corinthian archives. The prophecy spoke of a great change that would come to the Corinthian dominion. A ruler would arise who was not born of Corinthian blood, someone from beyond the empire, someone entirely unexpected. This ruler would bear 7 marks upon her spirit, marks that the seers could identify through their mystical abilities. This ruler would bring peace to the endless wars not through greater military strength, but through a completely different approach, something the Corinthians had forgotten in their long history of conquest and domination. Kate felt her head spinning. She asked Vex if the prophecy was about her. She said that this made no sense at all. She was a human woman from Earth, not some prophesied ruler. She did not know anything about galactic politics or diplomacy or ruling empires. She knew about plants, about soil composition, about photosynthesis and root systems. She was not qualified to do any of the things that Vex was describing. Vex responded that the prophecy did not care about qualifications or expectations. The seers had detected the 7 marks on Kate's spirit, and the readings were absolutely certain. Kate was the human the prophecy had spoken of. The Empress had spent decades searching across the galaxy for someone who matched the description provided by the seers. Many humans had been examined, but none of them had borne the marks. Kate was unique, and her uniqueness made her the chosen one, whether she wanted that role or not. Commander Lisa, who was standing beside Kate in the communications center, made a sound of protest. She told Vex that Kate could not simply be taken away to become a ruler of an alien empire. Kate was a human citizen with rights, and she had come to Kepler Station voluntarily as a scientist. Vex responded that she understood Lisa's concerns, but that the matter was beyond the jurisdiction of any single station or government. The prophecy was absolute, and the Corinthian dominion operated under very different laws than Earth did. Kate found her voice again. She told Vex that she refused. She refused to go anywhere with the alien fleet. She refused to become a ruler of any empire, Corinthian or otherwise. She refused to accept this prophecy or this destiny or whatever it was that Vex was trying to impose on her. Kate said that she was going to stay on Kepler Station and continue her work. Vex would have to find someone else to fulfill her prophecy, because Kate was not interested in leaving her life behind for something she did not believe in. Vex was silent for a moment, and Kate thought that perhaps her refusal had actually worked. Perhaps the alien herald would accept that Kate had declined and would simply depart and leave everyone alone. But then Vex's expression changed, and she seemed to become even more certain about something. She told Kate that her refusal was actually further proof that Kate was the one they had been seeking. Vex explained that the prophecy had contained another detail, that the Empress had not shared with anyone except her closest advisors. The prophecy stated that the true ruler would refuse the crown initially. A ruler who eagerly sought power was not fit to wield it, the prophecy said. The most qualified rulers were those who understood the burden and responsibility of leadership well enough to wish to avoid it. Kate's immediate refusal had actually confirmed to Vex that the search was over, and that the right person had finally been found. Kate felt a sense of desperation rising in her chest. She asked Vex if there was any way to prove that the prophecy was wrong. She asked if there was any way to prove that the 7 marks did not actually exist on her spirit. Vex said that the seer's abilities were absolute and infallible in matters such as this. There was no way to disprove the prophecy. It was written in the threads of fate itself. Commander Lisa put her arm around Kate and told her that they would figure out something. She said that they would contact Earth, and they would fight this situation through diplomatic channels. But even as she was saying these words, Kate could hear the uncertainty in her voice. A single human station did not have the resources to stand against an alien empire that had sent a massive warship across the galaxy. Vex told Kate that she should gather whatever possessions she wished to bring with her. Kate would be given quarters on the Veiled Fleet, and she would be treated with the utmost respect and care. She was not being taken as a prisoner, but as a person of great importance, whose presence was desperately needed by the Corinthian people. Vex added that she hoped Kate would eventually come to understand that destiny was not always something that could be refused simply because it was unexpected or unwanted. Kate looked at Commander Lisa. Lisa's face showed resignation mixed with anger, but she nodded at Kate. She told Kate to go ahead and gather her things. Lisa said that she would contact Earth and inform them of what had happened, and that she would work on finding a diplomatic solution. But they both knew that the Veiled Fleet was leaving this station regardless of what anyone wanted. Kate moved through her quarters on Kepler Station like someone in a dream. Nothing felt quite real. She packed her personal items into a small travel bag, moving almost mechanically from one task to the next. She gathered her favorite books, several photographs of her family back on Earth, and her personal research notes that she had been compiling over the past 3 years. She took her communication device, the one that allowed her to stay in touch with other scientists across the solar system. She wondered if that device would still work once she was aboard the alien vessel, and if it did, what she would even say to her family about what had happened to her. Her hands shook as she packed. Kate had always been someone who felt most comfortable when she had a plan, when she knew what was coming next. She was good at organizing her thoughts and her workspace. She preferred order and predictability. Now she was facing something completely unpredictable and chaotic, and there was nothing she could do to change the situation. She was at the mercy of forces far beyond her understanding or control. She sat on her bed for a moment and tried to process what was happening. An alien empire wanted her to become their ruler because of a prophecy. She had refused, but that refusal had apparently proven that she was the right person for the job. The logic was impossible and circular, and Kate found herself almost laughing at the absurdity of it all. If she agreed to go, then she was accepting her destiny. If she refused, she was also accepting her destiny. There was no way to win this situation. Kate finished packing and made her way back to the main docking bay, where a shuttle from the Veiled Fleet was waiting. Several crew members from Kepler Station were there to see her off, including Commander Lisa. The commander hugged Kate tightly, and Kate could feel Lisa's concern for her welfare. Lisa whispered that she was going to contact Earth immediately and set diplomatic channels in motion. She told Kate to stay strong and to remember that she was human, and humans had a remarkable ability to adapt to difficult circumstances. The shuttle was sleek and beautiful, made of materials that Kate could not identify. The walls seemed to be organic rather than mechanical, almost like the hull of the larger ship. The interior was warm and comfortable, with seating that seemed to mold itself to accommodate her body. A Corinthian female greeted Kate as she boarded the shuttle. Her name was Zara, and she was a warrior. She had silver scales that gleamed in the light, and her presence conveyed absolute confidence and capability. Zara introduced herself as Kate's personal guard, assigned to her by the Empress herself. Zara would be responsible for Kate's safety and well-being during the journey to the Corinthian throne world. The shuttle lifted off from Kepler Station smoothly, and Kate watched as the station became smaller and smaller below them. She saw the planet Zephyr in the distance, its russet surface beautiful and alien. She wondered when she would ever see that view again, or if she was leaving behind a part of her life that she would never be able to recover. The journey to the Veiled Fleet took only a few minutes. As they approached the massive warship, Kate could see its full size and scope. The vessel was absolutely enormous, far larger than she had realized when viewing it on the monitors. It looked like a living creature made of metal and light. The shuttle docked smoothly with the larger ship, and Zara led Kate into the interior. The corridors of the Veiled Fleet were vast and flowing, designed for beings who moved in very different ways than humans did. Some of the pathways seemed designed for beings with multiple limbs, while others appeared to be for creatures that flew or hovered. Kate had to concentrate to keep up with Zara's confident strides. Her human eyes were trying to process the alien architecture and the constant movement of crew members from multiple different species. Zara brought Kate to her quarters, which were far more luxurious than anything Kate had expected. The main room was enormous, with walls that could display any environment she wished. Zara showed Kate how to activate the display screens. Kate could choose to view Earth or Zephyr, or even the vast expanse of space outside the ship. Zara told Kate that Vex had arranged everything to make her as comfortable as possible during the journey. Kate asked Zara how long the journey to the Corinthian throne world would take. Zara responded that it would take approximately 3 weeks if they traveled at moderate speeds through normal space. If they used the faster transit routes that the Corinthian Empire maintained, they could reduce that time to about 10 days. Vex had decided that they would use the faster routes, so Kate could be presented to the Empress as quickly as possible. 10 days. Kate had 10 days before she arrived at a place she had never been before, to meet an Empress who expected her to become the new ruler of an entire galactic empire. 10 days to somehow prepare herself for something that no amount of preparation could ever make her ready for. Zara informed Kate that meals would be brought to her quarters whenever she wished, and that she had freedom to explore most areas of the ship. Certain sections were restricted, but those would be clearly marked. Zara would be nearby at all times if Kate needed anything. Zara's duty was to ensure Kate's safety and comfort, and she took that duty very seriously. Kate could see the absolute certainty in Zara's eyes, and she realized that this alien warrior truly believed in the prophecy, and truly believed that Kate was meant to be the next Empress. After Zara left, Kate stood in the center of her new quarters and felt completely alone. She activated the wall display and looked at Earth, seeing her homeworld hanging in the void of space. She thought about her mother, her friends, all the people she had known and loved. She wondered how long it would be before she saw any of them again. She wondered if she would ever see them again at all. Kate sat on the bed and allowed herself to cry. She cried for her lost future, for the quiet life she had been planning, for the simple joy of her research that she would probably never experience again. She cried for the enormous weight of responsibility that had been placed on her shoulders without her consent, and she cried because there was nothing she could do to change any of it. After her tears had passed, Kate lay on the bed and tried to sleep. Tomorrow she would need to be stronger. Tomorrow she would need to start learning everything she possibly could about the Corinthian Empire and the role she was expected to play. But tonight, she would allow herself to grieve the life she had lost in order to step into the life that fate had chosen for her. Kate woke the next morning to find that her quarters had automatically adjusted to a light cycle that matched her circadian rhythms. She did not remember setting this, but Zara had explained that the ship's artificial intelligence was designed to make new residents as comfortable as possible. Kate washed her face in the bathroom, which was also luxuriously appointed with amenities from dozens of different worlds. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the person staring back at her. She looked tired and frightened and small. There was a chime at her door, and Kate opened it to find Vex standing outside. The herald looked even more impressive in person than she had on the communication monitor. She wore clothing that seemed to be woven from light itself, and her scales caught the illumination from the corridor in patterns that were almost hypnotic. Vex greeted Kate warmly and told her that she hoped Kate had rested well. Vex then informed Kate that Empress Celestine's daughter would be arriving soon to begin Kate's education about the Corinthian Empire. Kate's eyes widened. She asked if the Empress's daughter would not be upset that Kate was taking her place as the next ruler. Vex smiled and explained that the matter was more complicated than that. The Empress had multiple children from various relationships throughout her long reign, and the line of succession was not as straightforward as it might be in human societies. The daughter who would be teaching Kate was named Lisa, and she had been trained from birth to assist the future ruler, whoever that ruler turned out to be. Lisa had known about the prophecy her entire life, and she had prepared herself for the possibility that she would be guiding someone else into power, rather than taking that power for herself. When Lisa arrived at Kate's quarters, Kate was surprised by her appearance. Lisa was younger than Kate had expected, probably only a few years older than Kate herself. She had the same shimmering skin and violet eyes as Vex. but her scales were a deep blue rather than the silver that Zara wore. Lisa's demeanor was friendly and warm, and she seemed genuinely interested in getting to know Kate, rather than resenting her for the role she was about to assume. Lisa explained that she had been raised with the understanding that the prophecy would be fulfilled. She had spent her entire childhood studying history, politics, and diplomacy in preparation for serving the next ruler of the Corinthian Dominion. She told Kate that she was actually relieved that the prophesied ruler had finally arrived. She had been waiting for this moment her entire life, and now her purpose was to help Kate understand everything she needed to know in order to rule wisely and well. Over the next several days, Lisa taught Kate about the Corinthian Empire. She explained the complex political structure, the various allied species that existed within the Dominion, and the military structure that had been the foundation of Corinthian power for thousands of years. She taught Kate about the neighboring empires that constantly threatened to expand their own territories. She explained the history of wars and conflicts that stretched back for centuries. Kate learned about the current state of the empire. Resources were indeed becoming scarce, and many of the conquered planets were growing restless under Corinthian rule. The military was stretched thin trying to maintain control over vast territories. Empress Celestine had begun to wonder if conquest and domination were the right strategies for long-term stability and prosperity. She had started to consider other approaches, but she had spent her entire reign building the empire through military might, and changing course was difficult. Lisa showed Kate historical records of previous rulers and the decisions they had made. Some rulers had been loved by their people, while others had been feared. Some had expanded the empire, while others had focused on consolidating power. Lisa explained that the most successful rulers had been those who were able to adapt to changing circumstances and think creatively about problems. One evening, Kate and Lisa were sitting in Kate's quarters, looking out at the stars as the ship traveled through space. Kate asked Lisa directly if she resented Kate for becoming the next ruler. Lisa was quiet for a moment, and then she said that she did not resent Kate at all. She had always known that someone would come, and she had trained herself to accept that reality. But more than that, she actually believed in the prophecy. She believed that the Corinthian people needed a ruler who could bring something new to the empire, something that had been lost in centuries of warfare and conquest. Kate asked Lisa what the prophecy actually meant. What did it mean to bring peace to an empire that had built its entire existence on military conquest? How could she possibly do that when she was just a human botanist with no experience in politics or warfare? Lisa responded that the prophecy did not provide specific instructions. It only promised that the new ruler would bring a new approach to the fundamental problems that faced the Corinthian Dominion. The details would have to be worked out through thought and creativity and willingness to take risks. As the days passed and they continued their journey toward the throne world, Kate began to understand more clearly what her role might actually be. She was not being brought in to continue the old way of doing things. She was being brought in to change everything. And while that was terrifying, it was also strangely exciting in a way that Kate had not expected. She began to ask Lisa deeper questions about the history of peace negotiations between the Corinthian Empire and other powers. She wanted to understand what had caused past peace talks to fail, and what might be necessary to make future negotiations successful. She studied the history of the conquered worlds and tried to understand what motivated the populations that lived there. She began to think like a leader, trying to see the bigger picture rather than just focusing on isolated problems. Lisa watched as Kate's engagement with the material deepened. She could see Kate beginning to internalize the complexity of the situation. Lisa told Kate that she was beginning to understand why the prophecy had chosen Kate. Kate's human perspective, combined with her intelligent and analytical mind, might be exactly what the Corinthian Empire needed. But Kate remained uncertain. She still did not feel qualified for what was being asked of her. She still missed her quiet life of research and simple pleasures. She still hoped that somehow this would all turn out to be a mistake, that the prophecy would be proven wrong, and that she could return to her comfortable existence on Kepler Station. On the night before they were scheduled to arrive at the throne world, Kate lay in bed and tried to calm her racing thoughts. She was about to meet Empress Celestine. She was about to be presented as the future ruler of an entire galactic empire. Tomorrow her life would change forever in ways she could not predict or control. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe slowly. reminding herself that she had already survived the most shocking part of this experience. Whatever came next, she would find a way to endure it. The morning of Kate's arrival at the Corinthian throne world dawned with a kind of crystalline clarity that made everything feel surreal and vivid at the same time. Kate looked out from the observation deck of the Veiled Fleet and saw the planet below for the first time. It was breathtaking. The world had twin moons that hung in the sky like enormous jewels, and the continents below were covered in vast cities that glowed with architectural magnificence. The cities seemed to be alive with light and color, and from this distance they looked like organisms rather than structures built by sentient beings. Zara arrived at Kate's quarters with a formal gown for the presentation ceremony. The gown was made from materials that Kate could not identify, but it shimmered with deep blue and silver colors that matched the Corinthian aesthetic. As Zara helped Kate into the gown, she explained that Kate would be walking through the great halls of the throne complex to meet with Empress Celestine. There would be hundreds of Corinthian nobles and military leaders present to witness the moment when the new ruler was officially recognized by the Empress herself. Kate's hands were trembling as Zara fastened the gown. She told Zara that she was terrified, that she had no idea what to say or do in front of all those people. Zara responded that Kate should simply be herself. She should walk with dignity, listen carefully to what the Empress said, and trust that everything would unfold as it was meant to unfold. Zara told Kate that in her long life as a warrior, she had learned that destiny had a way of guiding people through moments that seemed impossible to navigate. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the throne world, and Kate watched as the glowing cities grew larger and more detailed. The shuttle touched down on a landing platform that overlooked vast gardens and architectural wonders. Kate could see structures that seemed to defy physics, buildings that spiraled into the sky in patterns that were both beautiful and somehow unsettling. Everything about this world was alien and magnificent in ways that made Kate feel small and insignificant. When Kate stepped out of the shuttle, she was met by a procession of Corinthian ceremonial guards. They wore armor that was ornately decorated with symbols and patterns that Kate did not understand. They moved in perfect formation, and as Kate joined them, they began to escort her toward the great palace that dominated the center of the city. Citizens of the Corinthian dominion lined the streets as the procession passed, and they seemed to know who Kate was. They watched with intense curiosity, and what might have been reverence, but Kate could not be certain. The great palace was even more impressive up close than it had appeared from a distance. The walls seemed to be carved from a single piece of stone, and they were covered with intricate patterns and reliefs depicting thousands of years of Corinthian history. Kate recognized scenes of military victories, images of past rulers, and symbols that she had learned from Lissa represented the core values of Corinthian civilization. The ceremonial guards led Kate through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls grew progressively more ornate and decorated as they moved deeper into the palace. Kate saw tapestries that told stories of conquest and triumph, paintings that depicted Corinthian rulers in their moments of glory, and sculptures that represented the ideals of Corinthian society. Everything was designed to communicate power and dominance and the absolute certainty of Corinthian superiority. Finally, the guards brought Kate to the throne room. The doors were enormous, standing at least 3 times Kate's height. As they opened, she could see the vast chamber beyond. The throne room was circular, with a domed ceiling that was open to the sky. The light from the twin moons and the distant stars filled the chamber with an ethereal glow. In the center of the chamber, elevated on a platform of stone, was the throne itself, and seated on that throne was Empress Celestine. The Empress was beyond anything Kate could have imagined. She was ancient, her scales bearing the patina of ages, some of them cracked and worn from centuries of life lived fully and completely, but her eyes were absolutely alive with intelligence and power. She sat on her throne with the absolute certainty of someone who had ruled for longer than most human civilizations had existed. Hundreds of nobles and military leaders lined the walls of the throne room, all of them watching as Kate was escorted toward the center of the chamber. Kate was guided to stand before the Empress, and the chamber fell silent. Empress Celestine stood slowly from her throne and began to descend the steps that led down from her elevated platform. She moved with surprising grace for someone of such great age. As she approached Kate, the young human felt her heart pounding so hard that she thought it might burst from her chest. The Empress studied Kate for a long moment, and Kate could feel the weight of that ancient gaze. Then Celestine spoke, her voice deep and resonant and filled with the authority of someone who had commanded armies and empires. The Empress said that the prophecy had been fulfilled, and Kate Summers was the one who had been foretold by the ancient seers. Kate bore the 7 marks upon her spirit, and she had already demonstrated the humility and reluctance to power that the prophecy had specified. Kate was worthy, and Celestine was passing on her imperial authority to this human who came from the distant world of Earth. The Empress took Kate's hand and placed it upon her own forehead in a gesture of succession. The action seemed to trigger something in the assembled nobles and warriors. They began to chant Kate's name over and over again, their voices growing louder and more fervent. The sound was overwhelming and powerful, and it made Kate feel like she was floating above her own body. When the chanting finally faded, the Empress turned to Kate and told her something privately, her voice low enough that only Kate could hear. Celestine said that she had been looking for someone to carry the burden of leadership in a new direction for a very long time. She had led her people with strength and military might, and she did not regret those choices, but she understood that the old ways would not be sufficient for what the future held. Kate was the one who would have to find a new path, a path that the Corinthian people might not initially understand or appreciate. But Celestine believed that Kate had the wisdom and the courage to walk that path nonetheless. As the ceremony continued, with various nobles and dignitaries coming forward to acknowledge Kate's new status, Kate began to feel something shifting within her. The fear was still there, the uncertainty was still present. But underneath those feelings, something else was emerging. It was a sense of purpose, a recognition that she had been chosen for this role not by accident but by fate. The prophecy had seen something in her that she had not yet seen in herself. And perhaps that was the point. Perhaps a ruler needed to be someone who was not entirely certain of her own abilities, someone who remained humble despite her power, someone who could lead with both strength and compassion. Kate looked out at the hundreds of Corinthian faces watching her, and she understood that she was no longer just Kate Summers the botanist. She was now something far more significant. She was the future empress of the Corinthian dominion, the human who had refused the crown and thereby proven herself worthy of wearing it. Her quiet life on Earth and her simple research seemed like they belonged to a different lifetime, to a different version of herself. She felt Lissa's presence nearby. And when she glanced toward the young Corinthian woman, Lissa was smiling with genuine warmth and pride. Zara stood nearby, her hand resting on her weapon, ready to protect Kate from any threat. And Vex was observing the proceedings with an expression of satisfied certainty, as if everything had unfolded exactly as she had always known it would. The prophecy had been fulfilled. Kate had refused the crown, and the galaxy had given it to her anyway. Her real journey was only just beginning, and everything that happened from this moment forward would determine not just her own fate, but the fate of countless worlds and billions of lives. As she stood in the throne room surrounded by alien nobility, Kate Summers took a deep breath and accepted her destiny.